Welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and I'm so excited to be back with you. We have ran and have finished, hopefully, the Chicago Marathon. I am recording this before I actually race, before I head out of town. So unfortunately, we can't talk about the race because I don't know what happens, but I do know that the weather's looking great. My legs are feeling good and my mind is sharp. It's ready. It's hungry. And, that's probably the best place that any athlete can be. So that's really exciting, heading into any race. So I thought about recording an episode while I was in Chicago, but kind of looking at my schedule and all the things that are planned after the race and meeting up with quite a few people that I coach, as well as past athletes that I've coached, friends, Instagram followers and connection and community. There's going to be a lot going on until I fly back on Monday night. So I thought, for Jake's sake, who puts the podcast together after I record it. I send it to him. He edits it. He puts the music in, the ads. He's phenomenal at what he does. He doesn't have to rush for getting this podcast episode out. So maybe there'll be another one just really quickly highlighting the Chicago Marathon, or maybe not. We'll see what happens. But in this week's episode, this is going to be a multi-week episode. I'm excited about this. These episodes might be shorter. They might be punchier. That's been something that's been on my mind with the Elevate Your Running podcast for a few years now. I love Justin Sua. He is a mental strength coach for a lot of professional athletes and professional teams in the United States. And he has a daily podcast that he puts out where it's a 2-3 minute podcast, unedited. So if he, stumbles or has a long pause, that's all part of his podcast, which I really love because it really just makes it very humanized. And it's just a few minutes every single day. It's a topic a day, and he just quickly talks through it. And I've really loved that concept, even if you've been listening since way long ago. This podcast is 3.5 years old. Young. And when Austin was part of the podcast, that was something that we talked about is like, I really wanted shorter episodes just to see how it does, to see how it lands, to do something a little bit different within the podcasting space, because there are a lot of running podcasts and it feels like many of them are the same. So just trying to do something a little bit different, see if it works. Maybe it doesn't work, but maybe it does. So we're going to give it a try. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to talk about one topic a week, and they're all going to be based around skill sets that you need as an athlete to be able to train and to race your best. And I think this part of the year is a great time to talk about it, because as people are coming off of their races for their fall race season, and as people are maybe taking a break from training, or maybe just running into, no pun intended, but like easy miles, I think it's a great place to kind of reset. What do you want to create in 2026? What do you want to do with your training, with your racing? How do you want to show up? What do you need to work on? And like I mentioned in last week's episode, I feel like the last few months have been, even though it's a very short training cycle, it's probably been the one where I've grown the most, which I'm really proud of. And some of these things are things that I've needed to learn along the way. Sometimes we have blind spots and we don't really know how we're showing up to certain things until someone points them out. And so it can be a really neat way to learn, to grow, to become just a stronger version of ourselves, which I think is what we're all trying to do at the end of the day, whether it's in running or in life. So I know I mentioned this on last week's podcast episode, but Clayton Young, shout out to Clayton in the lead car at Chicago Marathon. I know I haven't run it yet, but I'm just so excited that he gets to be there. Connor gets to be there. The vibe is there. It's a good vibe. So Clayton's mantra is consistent competence equals eventual excellence. And I think that this is going to be a theme over the next few weeks on this podcast of the more that we can be consistent, the more we are going to lead to excellence. And we can also blend in the skill sets that we need to learn, embrace, and use when we're in training. And how we show up in training is how we show up on race day. And if we can continue to use these skill sets in training, we are going to be able to use them on race day. And more times than not, you're going to find a breakthrough, because typically when an athlete plateaus, it can absolutely be training. It can absolutely be training. More often than not, it's the mind that's the barrier to being able to flow through that plateau and do something great. So, all of these topics that I cover too over these next few weeks can become your process goals. So that's something to think about as we head into 2026. What does your race calendar look like? What do your process goals look like? What do you need to work on? I think now is also a great time to reflect back on the rest of the year. Or, hey, maybe if you're running New York, Indy, CIM, you want to wait until after your race is over. So maybe listen to this podcast and then go back to it after your race. But I think it's also really important to reflect back on what worked, what didn't work this year. I have a lot of feedback on what hasn't worked and also what's worked, but more of the blind spots to my training, and being able to shift through that, to use it to my advantage, to maybe create new process goals for 2026 as I head into 2026. But I actually don't have any races on the calendar for 2026, which is the first time since 2017 I haven't had a race on the calendar. So it feels very freeing. It feels like there's a lot of space, there's a lot of room. But that's where I'm at in life. I want to create a lot of space. I want to create a lot of room. I want to create a lot of time for me to really lean into the things that I want to lean into, and not use running as a way to be busy and to only focus on running and work and very other few things. So I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but I think it's going to be awesome. So we'll see how it works. But as we head into this week's episode, the topic of the week is patience. And I think patience is, after looking at all of these topics, is like the one that I wanted to talk about first, because I think it's the one skill set, or it's the one theme within endurance running that we as athletes don't understand that we need the most of. Because as we get into running, how many of us got into running and we started to run, and maybe it was 2 times a week, 3 times a week. For me, it was 6 or 7 days a week, which, tracks with, if you know me in real life, totally tracks. You find fitness, you find PRs, you find a lot of fun in it at a very rapid pace. And then all of a sudden things kind of shake out, they balance out, they flatten out, you plateau a little bit. You might have a really hard workout and then you start to spiral, and then you don't understand why you're spiraling, because you might have still actually hit the pace, but it still felt hard. So you're going to spiral anyways. I've seen it all as a coach. I've seen it all. And that's a really tough place for athletes to be at, because for the longest time, you, more times than not, and I would say closer to 100% of the time, you feel like training is fun, running is fun, because you're making these leaps and bounds and you have so much progress to make. And it usually occurs in such a short amount of time that you just feel like it's going to continue that way, but it doesn't. And so one of the skill sets that we need to learn as endurance runners is patience. And it's probably one of the things that, as we sign up for races, and maybe we sign up specifically for, wanting our, let's say we sign up for a marathon, we don't understand that we're also signing a silent contract on patience and having patience to get to what we want. So let's think about our ultimate goal in running. That could be in any distance. You could be a 5K runner listening to this podcast and you want to break 20 in the 5K, but maybe your current 5K time is 26 minutes or 28 minutes. That's a ways to go, right? That's 8 minutes. I've had athletes chase sub 30 5Ks, and it has taken seasons of 5Ks to get it done, or 4 or 5 races over the course of a season to get it done. And now it's like, well, now I want to run under 28 or 26, right? Like the goal is always moving around, but I want you to think about your ultimate goal in the sport in any distance. For me, for the very longest time, I think after I ran my first marathon and I Boston qualified, which was my goal, I decided that I wanted my marathon goal to then shift to running a sub-3 marathon. Um, and I thought, how long is it really going to take? Because I just ran a 3:25 off of my first marathon. So, like, how long is it really going to take? Well, here we are. This is actually going to be really funny if I pull like a Hail Mary and actually do this at Chicago. Um, but it's like 6 years later, and I'm 8.5 minutes away from running a sub-3. Now, going into Chicago, I am a lot closer to 3 than I am to 3:08 in terms of fitness, which is really exciting. But we also know that anything can happen on race day. There's a lot of things that we can't control, and anything can happen on race day. So who knows? But this is going to be really great to look back on to see what I actually read. But patience, right? So you might think, oh, how long can it take? Maybe a few cycles. No, it's typically going to take years and years and years and years. And if the goal is big enough, which I really encourage everyone to have big goals, it should take quite a few years. We don't hit our max, our potential in this sport, in the endurance world, until we're right around 10 years, which is a long time. And I don't actually know, because I started this so late, later than most people. I just don't know if I have the stamina to get to 10 years. Like, I really don't, which is why I'm taking a little pivot into my what I thought I was going to do in training and do something just different for a while to see how that feels, and if I can get a little bit of that motivation back to train really hard to go after a sub-3 marathon, which is 6:52 pace, which is fast. It's hard. And you don't actually run 6:52. You have to run like 6:47 to actually make it work with the tangents, which is a very different pace. So, anyways, patience is key. And it's probably going to be the skill set that we all need as runners, because we need it not only in training, but we need it in workouts. We need it in races. We need it when we think about the long term gain, right? So I think I want you to think about patience as kind of like comparing it, or comparing your running progress to compound interest. We talk about making our training deposits all the time on this podcast, and I talk about it as a coach to my team. Like, we are making deposits every day, whether that's getting in the entire training run or maybe we get in half of the training run. Something is always better than nothing in my eyes as a coach. I'd rather see something rather than I didn't have time to get this run done. Well, you probably had some time to get some of it done, and that's going to be half a deposit. I'll take half a deposit rather than nothing. But you want to compare running progress to compound interest. So just like money in a high interest savings account, let's say, small consistent efforts or deposits into that savings account are eventually going to yield compounding interest, and all of a sudden your balance is like widely high, right? It's like wildly high. Same is going to be true with running. So if we can make deposits into our training with easy runs, our strength work, really listening to our bodies and workouts, not overrunning workouts, it's eventually going to lead to exponential returns down the road. Now, this could be consistent running over the course of years and compounding training cycles. We talk about the bricks stacking. This is kind of the same idea around that. Going into the Chicago Marathon this year for my own training, I've only had 9 weeks of training, which is not a lot. It's like kind of what the elites do, and they're at a totally different level than I am. And the only way I've been able to get through this training cycle healthy, or not create a second injury and not create a worse injury than I already have, I'm managing it through training, has been my consistency over the last 6 years and running the mileage that I have and running the workouts that I have, because I jumped pretty quickly into a 20-mile long run, and then I had 5 in a row. And that is not ideal for 99% of runners. I mean, if as a coach looking at that, that makes me kind of cringe a little bit, because it has the ability to get injured is quite a bit higher looking at something like that. But I wasn't looking at my training as a coach. I was looking at it like, I really want to run this race if I can run this race. So impatiently chasing big gains in training. So that could mean kind of like what I just did in the Chicago Marathon build of like, I built up for 7 weeks, didn't take a recovery week, came down in the taper, had 5 20 plus mile long runs back to back to back to back to back. It could be moving a workout next to a long run, impatiently chasing big gains, overrunning workouts, overrunning long runs is like withdrawing all your money out of your account before race day. Yikes, no one wants that. Or before it can compound, because that's also true too. So I think it's really important to kind of think about that kind of idea when you think about your long term goals and what you want to do. Every cycle has a purpose. Every cycle is going to give you fitness if you allow it. And it's also going to give you the ability to grow, to learn, to improve. And then hopefully, the goal at the end of the cycle is to race, celebrate your race day, and run a race that you're really proud of, no matter whether it's the outcome or you lean into the process or you lean into the performance standards that you've set for yourself going into that race, which is really how you're showing up during the race when things feel good and when things don't feel good. So that's going to be really, really important to think about. So I want you to think about the long-term view, patience around performance, and know that it's going to take a long time. But each individual cycle is going to give you that opportunity to lean in, to grow, to learn, and to do something really great as you head into the next season. Now, I want you to think about patience as your secret weapon against racing, right? It is race day execution. So patience is huge when it comes to racing, especially if you're racing the marathon. I've seen it all. I've seen people go out real hot and blow up. I've seen people run consistent even splits, which is like ideal. And it's also really, really incredible to see people do that. And then I've seen the progression. I've had a lot of race strategy calls with athletes over the last few weeks. And any new athlete that's running a marathon with me for the first time typically looks at their pacing plan and they're like, I've never done this before. And I'm like, congratulations, you are going to PR. Trust the process. Trust it, trust it, trust it. I will refer you to athletes who have said that to me and have done wonderful things in this distance. And it's also like, let's look back to these long runs. You have done this before in your training. So patience in your race day execution is going to be huge. You cannot go out too fast when it comes to race plan. Going out in the first mile of a marathon is probably the easiest way to blow up your race. Now, if you see that mile come in too fast, you can absolutely pull back. You'll be okay. But a lot of times our ego gets in the way, and then we think, well, maybe I'll just hold this because it feels good. Well, congratulations. It should feel good. You are carved up, you are tapered, your glycogen stores are tip top shape. You are surrounded by people who are in that exact same environment, and everyone is very excited to run this race. So if you don't feel good, it could be a matter of it's the day or you're just not warmed up yet. So there's a saying that goes something like you can lose the marathon in the first mile, but you can win it in the last 10K. And what that means is if you go out too fast in the marathon, you have the ability to lose the race right then and there because you went out too fast. You're burning your glycogen stores way too quickly. And this is the long game. This is 26 miles. But if you hold back, if you're conservative, and hopefully you're looking at my Strava splits, and hopefully I've executed this the way that I want to, you're seeing my first 10K of the Chicago Marathon maybe being a little bit slower than you thought I was going to run, or maybe you don't know what I was going to run, but you see that there's a progression and that I haven't lost the race in the last 10K. How many of us run marathons and we're on pace to do what we want to do? This was true for me at Indianapolis until mile 20. And then all of a sudden, things get real hard and pace starts to slip and you're getting slower and slower and slower. I lost 3.5 minutes in my last 10K at Indianapolis because I couldn't hold pace and all the things. So I think it's really important to look at your race day execution as a way to progress. And you can think of the marathon distance, same is true with the half marathon distance, even if you take the first mile a little bit slower. You could think of your marathon like a bank account. A fun fact for anyone listening, you may or may not know this, but I do have a background in finance, which is why I talk a lot about money or accounts or deposits in running, because I think it's also kind of relatable too. But, anyways, you want to think about your marathon like a bank account. So every little bit of energy that you're giving during the race, and this could mean running to water tables, this could mean running around a slow group of people, running around a pace group. Every little bit of energy that you spend in that first mile is a major withdrawal. Jog, jog, jog the first mile. You want to feel like you're making small deposits back. And that's going to be with really strong pacing, being patient until the halfway mark. And then you can make your final withdrawal with the last 10K to go and feel really smooth and comfortable and hopefully confident going into that last 10K. So that'll be really exciting to see you hopefully practice this in 2026. And I think patience is also more so needed in training. How often do we go into training and we push the envelope in our workouts, meaning we overrun the workout because we think faster means fitter? It does not. It does not. We can run, if we're running VO2 workouts on the track, like running up to 5K effort, maybe 3K effort is good enough. And good enough is where we want to be in training, because we don't want to race on in our training. We want to be able to create these training deposits and not withdraw from our training bank. So when we get to taper, we're able to fill up that savings account and then take the withdrawal out on race day. I see this very often as a coach, not only coaching people in person. That Denver team loves to overrun intervals. And of course, with my one-on-one coaching team, really trying to stick with the pace. And then there's indications to me as a coach when maybe fitness has changed and the athlete has up-leveled in their fitness. And then it's like, well, we should take that into account and kind of move some things around to kind of accommodate. But at the end of the day, we really want to stay tried and true to what your coach or what the training plan is suggesting when it comes to pacing, because if we overrun paces and we're not patient in the training interval or with our paces, we have the ability to get hurt. We have the ability to get burnt out. We have the ability to overdo it and feel like we trashed our legs, and then we're unable to recover or recover enough before our next quality session. So there's a lot of drawbacks, and faster doesn't mean fitter. So we don't have to be running mile efforts on the track if we're really trying to, train for something around 5K, 10K effort. Typically, that speed is going to be enough unless you're training for the mile. That's like when training around mile paces. But again, that's not like every week either. So there's a lot of caveats. Stick with what is written on the plan as best as you can. Now, if you're an athlete who really knows themselves, you're maybe an intermediate to advanced athlete, you've been in this sport for a long time. If you're working with a coach, you should be able to communicate effort, and specifically with like half marathon, marathon tempos. It has felt like in my training in this cycle, paces are coming in faster at kind of the same effort, or what was originally written for marathon pace is feeling very, 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 very smooth. And that's a good place to be, and giving your feedback to a coach like that week over week over week, right? Because one workout doesn't indicate really much. It's just you had a really good day. But if it starts to become a trend, like it has become a trend in my training, it's like, well, I guess there's something to this. So like we got to kind of lean into it if we want to get maybe the most out of the training, but we don't necessarily have to, if that makes sense. So having patience in training is going to be major. Having patience in the long run is also major. When I run long runs with other people, it's always interesting to me when I see runners go out and let's say we have 14 or 16 miles, and this has 100% happened to me. And we start running real hot in mile one. And I'm like, why are we running this fast? we still have 15 miles to run. Like, that's a long time. And like, I don't want the last 4 or 5 miles to feel like a sufferfest. I just don't. Like, that just seems like not a smart way to train. And I think it can really like beat down on the mindset of an athlete. And, when you're already stringing together a really big training cycle, that's just not it, right? So start your long runs, and this is also really relevant to your easy days as well. Start the first few miles out slow, be patient, jog, then kind of get into your flow, because you have, if you, let's say you have a long run, you have 15 miles for the day. That's 2+ hours of running. You got plenty of time to find a flow and to click those miles off. But to start out hot right out of the gate is a really good way of setting yourself up to burn out at the end, not be able to hit pace, or you're pushing pace so hard that you have now made this run into a totally different training run. You might be running zone 3 or zone 4 at the end of the run, which is not really it. That's not the point of just a easy or long run effort. So I really want you to think about how you show up on your easy days during the week and then on your long runs. Are you patient? Do you give yourself a few miles before flowing into it? Because how we show up in our training runs is going to be how we show up on race day. So in this cycle, I've had a really hard time actually doing that. In past cycles, it hasn't been a problem, but I think with maybe my mileage being lower, and having some time to really rest and not have a lot of workouts this summer, my body adapted to a lot of the training that I've had with Nell over the last 3 years. So feeling a little bit fitter, feeling a little bit more ready, a little bit more poppy. And I've really had to like pull myself back quite a bit in some of those easier first miles, just to make sure it's like, I really want to set myself up for success today and not blow up at the end of this run, because that never feels good. So practicing how you want to race is also a great way to practice patience, because we're all going to need to have patience on race day. So really dialing in that race day execution, your training, your long run patience is going to be key. And now, patience as a secret weapon against injury, because everyone gets injured as a runner. It's just a matter of when, how often, and whether you stay injured or whether you're healthy right now. What we know to be true is that that's not going to stay that way forever. It's going to change. So that's something I hope to help motivate those who are kind of going through an injury or someone who is going through a setback, is that it's not going to stay this way forever. You'll eventually flow through it. But patience and viewing patience with an injury, I think it's really important to kind of see it not as a passive waiting game. You're not just sitting on the couch waiting to feel better. So, one of the things that Nell wanted me to do very quickly after my last workout, which I was in a lot of pain and I was limping, in denial that I was limping, but I was limping. She wanted me to continue to run, and she's like, sometimes running is actually going to help loosen it up. It's going to help make it feel better. So this is going to be a really great way to continue getting in some miles, maybe loosen it up. That can be true with Achilles injuries. That can be true with other injuries, but it's not going to be every injury, right? Like a bone stress injury is more of that. Let's do cross training. Let's really focus on our nutrition. Let's really focus on giving our body all the nutrients it needs to repair and heal this bone injury. So, more of that active approach is going to be super, super beneficial for anyone going through injury. So, that could mean going to your PT, getting dry needling, which is something I was doing weekly. I was getting weekly massages, which was so nice, such a treat, but also not sustainable, and daily exercises. And I think I've shared with you that like some of my warm up exercises and routines were longer than my actual run for the first few weeks, when I was able to get back to running and running like every other day for 30 minutes a day. And this is someone I've been running most days out of the week for 70 to 90 plus minutes most days. So like a 30-minute run doesn't really feel like much, but I was so, so grateful to be there and to have all these active strategies to get me out the door feeling as best as I could feel that day. So I want you to think about, maybe the 10% rule is kind of your patience rule, right? So when we go into injury, being as patient as possible can be really difficult because there's a breaking point for everyone on when that day is, and when you're just fed up and you're just like, I just want to run hard today, or I want to run long today, but you're not really in that place. So the best way to kind of go about it is practicing the 10% rule, which we talk about the 10% rule in terms of mileage increase week over week before we take that down week or that cutback week after the third week. So I think, using that 10% rule as a patience rule when you're injured is a really interesting way to kind of go about it. So it could mean that you are giving like you're still increasing your mileage by 10% when you're coming off of an injury, right? And not doing too much and not overdoing it by running too hard or too long, and thinking of it as a way of self-care, self-love. You're giving your connective tissues, your ligaments, your muscles, your tendons time to adapt. And as they adapt slower, they're going to adapt slower than like your cardiovascular system. But keeping in mind the 10% rule of what we want to do in terms of building is going to be really key. If you have a really great PT like I had, shout out to Dr. Sarah Zimmer of Boulder Sports Physiology or Physio. She has a practice both in Denver and Boulder. She's phenomenal. If you're in the area, highly, highly, highly recommend her and Dr. Lindsay, who practices out of Boulder. They have been instrumental in my return to running, and as well as with some of the Elevate athletes who are going through niggles and setbacks within their body as we go through training. So they've been awesome. I think it's really easy to go after and chase a big jump in performance or mileage. But if you can kind of set yourself up for success and create these small, manageable, consistent doses and really be intentional with it. So when I got back into running, Dr. Sarah gave me a plan of like 30 minutes one day. And then I got the green light to cross train. I think I talked about this before. I was like, I'm not cross training. I'm not. I'm just not. I don't care enough to do that. It doesn't fill my cup. It actually makes us all feel so much worse, more so my mind than anything. And I'm like, we're good. If I can't get to the Chicago Marathon and feel fit enough to race off of, building up very slowly in my running, that's fine, because that's, the stubbornness coming out of me. But it's also knowing what's going to fill your cup and what you want to do. And I've had athletes before who've like leaned into so much cross training and they've absolutely loved it. So big kudos to you if that's you. But instead of jumping, thinking about having these really small incremental runs and increases. So I would do 30 minutes on, rest day, 30 minutes on, rest day, 40 minutes on, rest day, 40 minutes on. And once I got up to like 45 minutes, I was able to do 2 back-to-back runs, but the second run was shorter. And, sometimes it's do as I say, not as I do, because I did end up adding in speed about a week earlier than we had talked about, but I was feeling pretty good. And I also knew like I kind of needed to test speed on this week. Otherwise, like the race was just totally out. And then I could let people know about like my travel plans, and they were kind of relying on me too. So it was kind of a balancing act of a lot of different things, but really having these small, manageable, consistent micro doses in your running is really going to help you, especially if you're coming back from a really big injury, a bone injury, or an injury that you just can't shake. The last thing we want to do is too much too soon, because that is the best, easiest, fastest way to get hurt. And same is true for when you race. After a big race, so the Chicago Marathon or any marathon, any race, half marathon, taking rest days is going to be crucial. It's going to be the best way for you to recover. And studies have shown that stress fractures actually increase in 4 to 6 weeks out after your A goal race, because some athletes will get back into it too fast, too soon, or a combination of the both. And that's where you don't want to be. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine having something like that. It's just not ideal. It's the process to come back is quite a bit slower. For anyone who's gone through it, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just, if it's something that we can prevent, we want to we want to do that. And obviously, it's not going to be something that we can always prevent, but we want to do our best to be able to come back into running after we take a week or a week and a half off. Yes, some detraining is going to happen. That is normal. And then just slowly build back in your miles and your intensity, and really wait for that intensity. Add in some strides first, and then add in a very comfortable style workout that is conservative and it's not too aggressive, so you can get back into it and continue to feel good. Because some athletes will get back into running too fast after, let's say, a breakthrough half or a big marathon, and then they show up flat for the rest of, it could show up 3 or 4 weeks after getting back into running, and then they're flat for 2 months. If you've ever felt flat while running, it's not good. It's like you almost just don't even want to run because you just feel like so awful. I've been there. Marathons 2 and 3, I got back into it 3 days after running the Boston Marathon and tried to train for my third marathon at Mesa. Highly recommend the race, but too close of a turnaround. And I think too, like, a lot of us can get impatient because we're looking for quicker results. I think Amazon has done a wonderful job at helping us feel like we need to have things instantly. If we even have a 2-day delivery window now, it's like, well, I want 2 hours or 20 minutes. So I think really leaning into the bigger picture and understanding that patience is going to help you get to where you're going. It could be a little bit slower than what you're intending, but that's also okay. Oftentimes, we have our own plan of how we're getting somewhere. In my case of this sub 3 hour marathon, I thought it was going to happen well before I was turning 43, well before marathon number 8. Chances are, because I haven't raced the race, there is a chance I could run sub 3, but there's a greater chance I am not running sub 3 at Chicago. So we'll see what happens. And know that it just takes time. And when you can accept it and know it and believe it, and then plan your running around the patient's skill set, and not just with your planning, but also within your training and within your workouts and within your long runs, within your racing, and how you show up during the recovery aspects after you race, you will grow so much as an athlete. I am taking patience into everything that I do in training and hoping that it sets me up for success. I hope you do too. I'd love to hear how patience has impacted you in your training and where you've seen it really help you and where you've seen maybe how impatience has not helped you. So I hope you loved this episode. Lean into patience. It could be one of your process goals for 2026. And if you're looking for one-on-one coaching, there are spots open with Coach Haley, Coach Amber. I have a few spots open for 2026. We have athletes doing some incredible things in all distances, primarily the half and marathon distance, but we do have a few trail runners doing some amazing things out on the trails as well. So if you're looking to feel supported, be part of a really great community who encourages you, supports you, lifts you high, and is there for you while you all chase really big goals and do some really amazing things, I'd love to have you part of the team. Feel free to reach out over email at Sarah, S-A-R-A, at Elevate Your Running. You can follow us on Instagram at Elevate Your Running, and Sarah, S-A-Y-R-A-H, runs happy. Thanks so much for everyone for listening to this week's episode. I'll be back next week with another skill set that we can hone in and use to the best of our abilities. Practice it, use it, love it for 2026, and do some of our best work next year. Thanks, everyone.